Chapter 10. Pain made me a messenger of hope. The truth is, I never signed up for this role. I didn't put my hand in the air and say, "Yes, make me the one people come to when they can't breathe." I didn't volunteer to be the shoulder for collapsing bodies or the voice someone calls when their world is falling apart. For most of my life, I didn't even believe I was worth listening to. I thought my voice belonged to silence. I thought my story belonged in the shadows. I thought my pain was a private prison, something to be endured, not shared. When you've been carrying wounds for years, you start to believe they're only yours, that no one would understand even if you tried to explain, and even if they could understand. Why would they care? That's how I saw the world, a cold, busy place where people had their own problems, their own storms, their own reasons to look past me. So I learned to make my presence small, not because I didn't have thoughts, but because I was convinced those thoughts didn't matter. I'd sit in rooms where people were sharing victory stories about how they turned their lives around, about how they'd found peace, and I would shrink back. I hadn't won anything. I was still bleeding, still doubting, still doing whatever I could to keep the walls from caving in. If you've ever been in that place, you know it's not that you don't want to help others, it's that you don't feel qualified. Who am I to speak hope into someone else's life when I can barely hold on to my own? That was me, day after day, until something shifted. And here's the thing, it didn't happen in some big dramatic breakthrough. There was no movie soundtrack playing in the background, no preacher calling me to the front of the stage, no sudden lightning strike of purpose. It was smaller than that. So small, I almost missed it. The change came in moments, little fragile moments that didn't look important at first, like the first time I said something honest in a room full of strangers. I wasn't trying to inspire anyone. I just didn't have the energy to keep lying. And when I spoke, something loosened in my chest, like a knot I didn't know I'd been carrying for years, finally came undone. Then came the first time someone pulled me aside after group and said, "What you said today, it's exactly how I've been feeling." I thought I was the only one. That sentence cracked me open, because it was the sentence I had been waiting to hear my whole life. You're not the only one. I didn't know it then, but those 5 words were about to rewire the way I saw my past, my pain, and myself. That one conversation stayed with me for days. I kept replaying it in my head, not because I had said anything profound, but because I had said something true. And that truth, raw, imperfect, unpolished, had reached someone in a way I didn't expect. I started to wonder how many other people were walking around carrying invisible weight, thinking they were the only ones, just like I had. I began noticing them, the way someone's eyes would drop when a certain topic came up, the nervous fidgeting in their hands when they were trying to hold something in, the fake laugh that came too quickly, too loud. It was like I could see past the mask because I had worn the same one for years. The more I saw it, the harder it became to stay quiet. So I started speaking up more, not to be wise, not to be inspirational, but because I knew what it felt like to be dying inside and still smiling on the outside. And I couldn't sit back and watch someone else pretend their way through the same hell. Sometimes I'd see the shift immediately, a softening in their posture, a deep exhale like they had been holding their breath for months. Other times, nothing, just a polite nod, maybe a thanks before they walked away. But even then, I learned not to measure the impact by their reaction. I had been on the other side before. Sometimes it takes days, weeks, even years before someone's words finally sink in. And that's okay. The goal isn't to get credit. The goal is to plant something worth growing. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing my pain as wasted. I realized it had been shaping me into someone who could stand in dark places without losing the light. And maybe that's why people started gravitating toward me. They could feel I wasn't pretending. I didn't talk about survival like it was a theory I'd read in a book. I talked about it like it was the only reason I was still standing. And that matters. People can feel the difference between rehearsed hope and lived hope. And lived hope has weight to it. It has scars. It has a voice that trembles but still speaks. I wasn't just telling them it was possible to make it out. I was proof. And the thing about being proof is that you don't get to choose when or where people will need you. You'll get calls at midnight. You'll be pulled aside in grocery store aisles. You'll have strangers sit next to you and pour their life story out in 10 minutes because something in you feels safe to them. It's not glamorous. It's not comfortable, but it's real. And real is rare. That's why I kept showing up even on the days I didn't feel like I had anything left to give. Because I remembered the nights I wished someone had shown up for me. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the very moments you think are draining you are actually the moments that are filling someone else's lungs with air. I learned something else in those moments, something they don't tell you in recovery books or motivational talks. Carrying hope is heavy. People think it's just about smiling, encouraging, telling someone, "You got this." But real hope, the kind that comes from surviving, isn't light at all. It's a responsibility. Because once you've walked through the fire and made it out, you can't unknow the way. You carry it with you. And when someone's trapped in the flames, you feel it in your bones. It's not pity, it's recognition. Like looking into a mirror and seeing your old reflection staring back at you. And sometimes it hurts more to watch someone else drown than it did when you were the one underwater. Because now you know exactly what it takes to breathe again. I'd sit in rooms full of people, listening to them talk about their struggles, and my mind would race, not with judgment, but with memory. I remembered the feeling of holding everything in, afraid that if I opened my mouth, the whole dam would break. I remembered the paranoia of wondering who was talking about me when I left the room. I remembered the shame of falling back into old patterns, swearing to myself it would be the last time. And I remembered the loneliness that came with believing no one would ever truly understand. That's why I don't sugarcoat my story. If I tell you I've been there, I mean all the way there, in the dirt, in the mess, in the nights that feel endless. Not kind of, not almost. And when I speak, I'm not performing. I'm handing you a flashlight I once had to fight for in the dark. Sometimes people thank me right away. Other times they disappear for a while, and months later I'll get a message. "Hey, I've been thinking about that thing you said. I think I'm ready now." And it always reminds me, healing doesn't move on my schedule. It's not about how fast I can reach someone. It's about being there when they decide they're ready to reach back. That's the work. Not fixing people, not saving them, just holding the door open and letting them know there's a way through. But lately, I've started to feel something I can't quite name. A shift. like I'm standing at the edge of something bigger, heavier, something that's going to demand more of me than anything I've done before. And the truth is, part of me is ready. The other part, still haunted by the fear that maybe this time I won't be enough. I don't think people realize that hope can feel like a double-edged sword. It saves you, but it also keeps you exposed, because once you become a safe place for others, you can't just shut the door and walk away. People start coming to you at all hours, some with tears, some with rage, some who just want to sit in silence because they can't find the words yet. And most days, I'm okay with that. But there are nights where I stare at the ceiling and wonder, who am I to carry all this? Who am I to be trusted with someone else's breaking point? That's the part no one talks about. How carrying hope means you're constantly dancing with the shadows, not just your own, but everyone else's too. The more people opened up to me, the more I realized something dangerous. I could feel their pain like it was my own. It was a gift and a curse. A gift because it made me present in a way that connected us instantly. A curse because it meant I sometimes left those conversations drained, hollow, staring at my own reflection and thinking, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And yet, the very next day, I'd show up again. One afternoon, after a group session, a young guy lingered by the door. I'd seen him before, always in the back, hoodie up, eyes locked on the floor. When everyone else left, he walked over and said quietly, Man, I was planning to end it this week. But the way you talked about surviving, I don't know. I guess I want to try. I felt my throat tighten, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what to say and exactly how much weight it carried. I told him, Then that's enough for today. Just the choice to try. We'll figure the rest out together. He nodded once, almost like he was sealing a pact neither of us had spoken out loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of the realization that maybe this is what my life had been training me for all along. Every wound, every failure, every lonely night, maybe it was never just about my healing. Maybe it was about becoming a bridge for someone else. And then, just as I was starting to feel steady in that role, something happened that shook the ground under my feet. The kind of moment that makes you question everything you thought you knew about pain, purpose, and the cost of holding hope for others. I can still hear the phone ringing in my head. I can still see the way my hand shook before I answered, and I can still remember the words that came next, words that would change everything. I don't know if you've ever had a moment where you're sitting in the middle of your own life looking around, and you realize, I've survived everything I wasn't supposed to. And yet, survival doesn't always feel like living. The last chapter ended with me standing in the wreckage of all I thought I'd lost, promising myself I wouldn't let it define me. But I didn't tell you what came next, because the truth is, after the applause in my own head faded, I went home to a bed that felt too big, a ceiling that wouldn't stop staring back, and a mind that wouldn't stop replaying every moment I'd failed myself. That's when it hit me. I'd gotten good at not dying, but I hadn't learned how to want to live.